Charles, we should start a subpoena club and all of these losers would be in it. How are you
That's.
tonight?
I think somebody else may have already started that club, Jason.
Exactly. You're looking super duper tan today.
Yeah, when you wear a white shirt, the tan comes out, the contrast comes out. But yeah, I'm in the sun every day, and the thing that's really nice about this climate, which I had not expected, because I have been here on days when in the past when I was traveling when it was beastly hot, is that in the morning and in the afternoon, it's always very pleasant. And in particular, if you start playing tennis at 4:30, 5 o'clock, it's hot. But as the sun goes down, the temperature drops and the breeze picks up, and it's heaven. It's like Santa Barbara. So it's wonderful.
Nice.
Yeah. So great to be back with you, Jason. I hope you're well and avoiding the scooter gangs that I read about here of illegal immigrants who are apparently terrorizing the city, going around on scooters and robbing your phone and then hacking your phone and going into your personal account and somehow getting the money out. And there was a story that was on Free Republic that I saw just now, that the police response is that it's too dangerous to chase them, so they just let them go away.
I haven't seen that, to tell you the truth. I mean, if anything, yeah, I don't know what they're talking about.
You're not in the outer boroughs. I think this is mostly in Queens.
Yeah. See, I didn't know about that. All this news that I'm seeing about scooter gangs, it's from like a year ago. I have to say that the Donald Trump ICE crackdowns seem to have convinced a lot of the illegal migrants to skedaddle. There's a lot of kind of hot spots that you and I used to go to. That little bus depot over there by the post office, completely cleared out. There's almost just nobody there at all ever anymore. So I don't know. There's been some progress. I guess they're getting for Zoran Mamdani to come in and destroy the whole place.
What about the igloo ladies? Are they gone, or are they still there on every corner?
Fewer, but they are still there. I see them. If you got to really be walking around lunchtime and know where the construction sites are, and they go right there. So they're not hanging out next to the whatever that hotel. It's not the. There's that hotel that used to be like the Shelbourne Hotel. I forget what the name of it is now.
On Park, you mean?
No, on just on maybe like 7th Avenue and 33rd or 34th. Right?
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. Yeah.
That's pretty cleared out. I mean, there are police vans in front of there still, but I don't see throngs of migrant children playing on the cell phone, and there's not the whole huge flotilla of electric bicycles chained to the scaffolding that there once was. I mean, I'm saying the city has substantially cleared out, and we see videos every day. Penske truck. They didn't have the Penske file, but they have the Penske truck company getting upset that they were, ICE was using their truck to raid Home Depot or something like that.
So I have some big news.
What's that?
I'm gonna move to Texas, and I'm gonna challenge Jasmine Crockett for her redistricted House seat wherever she ends up, because I'm a person of color now.
Oh, that's true. People would love that. The other thing I was going to tell you about wearing a white shirt with regard to your tan is that when you're in a mostly white room wearing a white shirt, not only does it bring out the tan, but it causes the auto exposure of the cell phone camera to stop down, making your face look even darker. So there you go.
Okay. All right. I knew that.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting and a bit unsettling to ride the Trump. It's not a train; it's a roller coaster, up and down. And yesterday we were like, "What the hell is going on?" And today, news out of Russia is that apparently, and I don't know if it's confirmed, that Trump and Putin are going to meet as soon as next week. Now, and apparently, the chatter coming out of the meeting, it's all secondhand, third hand, whatever. It was a 3-hour meeting. It was the 5th meeting that Witkoff had with Putin, and in it, concrete terms were discussed, or I think offered by Putin to end the war. If any of that is true, even if like 25% of that is true, I doubt we're going to face a nuclear exchange this weekend. I mean, I think we were in a place where we were, as of yesterday, but by when I went to sleep, my time, I couldn't understand what was going on. Um, so this is, I think, somewhat good news. But with Trump, one day it's up, next day it's way down, and then maybe it's back up. Um, the news with India is interesting. Now the tariff is going to go, it was 25, now it's going to be 50%. And speaking as somebody who was on the board, as I was, of an Indian company whose primary export market was the US and was doing well, had gone from nothing to a very substantial company, that's really going to hurt that company. And perhaps, although that company now has an operation in the US, so maybe it's able to circumvent some of the problem. But um, that's big news. And in my discussions with people who are well placed inside India, I was given the impression that they were close to a deal in June. So to be where we are now with regard to India, there's something way off with that, and it's surprising. But turning to the excellent poster and the subject of subpoenas, there are two pretty interesting things that I saw recently. One, there was a time, really for decades, when that son of a Nazi, Klaus Schwab, had had conned the entire world. I mean, literally, people like Justin Trudeau and Chelsea Clinton and all these people were World Economic Forum leaders, Chrystia Freeland in Canada, people like that. Klaus Schwab was running the room like running the global system like Dr. Evil, telling us that we would out there in, I guess, 2030, we'd own nothing and be very happy and live in these 15-minute cities where you can't go more than 15 minutes away from your tiny little shithole of an apartment, and you would take your orders from Schwab. Well, he and his wife, along the way, when they're preaching this sustainability and suffering for everybody else, they bought a mansion. They had the World Economic Forum spend, I think it was 30 million euros on a mansion called Villa Mundi, and then spent another 50 million fixing it up. And that was their personal residence, effectively. It was bought in the name of the foundation with donations. They lived lavishly, and not only paying themselves salaries, but in addition, huge expense accounts. They were writing off luxury travel as a World Economic Forum business event expense. They had a car and a driver and all this kind of shit. Well, that family's kicked out of the World Economic Forum, according to reports I just read this morning. And they should be paying penalties. But if the World Economic Forum in Switzerland is a place that generally takes care of its own. When problems emerge, they get buried. For this to happen in a Swiss context to the family that operated a charity as their personal pocket, personal piggy bank, remember that the Clinton Global Initiative was explicitly modeled, and there are multiple accounts of Doug Band and Bill Clinton going to the World Economic Forum in January of 2005. They'd been there before, but concluding, we can do this. We don't need, Klaus Schwab. And lo and behold, by September, they hold their first grist mill. September 2005, 5 months after they completely blew up the parent by amending its articles and amending its bylaws incorrectly. They had no authority to do any of this. And they've been doing it, with the exception of the Trump period, they've been doing it ever since, this Clinton Global Initiative. If the Swiss can get Schwab, then Trump should and must get not only Hillary, but Obama. And a penny dropped for me this morning when I saw an excellent article by Hans Monkey, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but he is not only a lawyer, he's a lawyer with 2 advanced degrees in law, an LLM and a PhD in law. And so I believe he knows the law pretty well. And he was going into the fact that there is this memo that I'd heard about, January 12th, 2016, and discussions. It's a memo, I think, memorializing discussions that Debbie Wasserwoman Schultz had with high-level people, saying that Obama did not want his legacy, quote, tarnished by investigations into the email scandal, but most importantly, by investigations into the Clinton Foundation. Now, why is that important? In January of 2014, Bob Bauer incorporates the Obama Foundation. And in June, they file an application of 2014 for a tax exemption, stating that it was going to be a traditional presidential library. That approval arrives July 21st, 2014, and fundraising then commences. So Obama, one of the reasons I think he didn't want, and his team didn't want, the Clinton Foundation investigation to proceed, because he had fully intended to do everything that the Clintons had done and more, and proceeded to do just that. That's why he has $1 billion in his foundation coffers as of last year, but an unfinished library that, by the way, is not going to be anymore a presidential library, without changing the Articles of Incorporation, without likely informing the IRS of this big change, that nullifies, in my view, the argument for tax exemption. Why should we have a worship cult for somebody? Why is that tax exempt? It's not a religion. There's no reason. The main reason the presidential libraries get and deserve tax exemption is when they relieve the federal government of the burden of storing presidential records and the capital costs of building and then maintaining the facility. That's why you get the tax exemption.
But Charles, didn't they always have some weird language about religion in the Obama Foundation, whatever it is, from the outset?
That should have been stricken.
But it was there. They obviously knew they were going to do this.
No. The fact that it's there doesn't mean you can put anything you want.
Well, it's a lawyer trick, I'm saying. They put it there.
Right, but it shouldn't have held up. The IRS. See, what I want to see, and what I hope Jeanine Pirro and whoever the U.S. attorney is in Florida who's going to get into this, I want to see the internal IRS full file on the opening, the request for tax exemption for every Clinton entity, the monitoring of their annual filings, the correspondence back and forth. When did the Clinton Foundation notify the IRS of all these changes? The answer, I have the letter, and I think it's a forgery, the response from the IRS. It was April of 2007. Bill had, by that point, collected more than $13.5 million for three different books that recounted his extensive activities beginning in August 2001, raising money for the Clinton Foundation. Terry McAuliffe has a book talking about how he started raising money for it in January of 1998. So there's a lot of stuff in the IRS file, and this memo says January 12th, 2016, Obama didn't want his legacy tarnished. Forget the email scandal. That's important for later. But the memo explicitly says he doesn't want his legacy tarnished by an FBI investigation it doesn't say it this way, that goes to the heart of the Clinton Foundation grift. He doesn't want to go there. Why doesn't he want to go there? In part, beyond the fact that he fully intends and has been intending to milk his foundation ever since, he was conned. In June of 2008, Obama and Hillary smoked a peace pipe, and probably more than that, in Dianne Feinstein's, one of her many mansions, the one in D.C. And thereafter, Bruce Lindsay hires Kamiki Gibson to try to clean up the shit pile that the Clinton Foundation was at that point. And then they signed this ridiculous memorandum of understanding we've been through in November or December 2008 that is just patently, not only is it meaningless, every sentence in it is false.
But would you say that being conned is the precise language? Isn't it more like he was coerced? They sort of made him do it.
That's the next set of questions. Why? What did they have on him? What do they have on him? That seems to be, the people in the NSA apparatus or the security apparatus seem to have cottoned on to the fact that it's better to have leadership and representatives and maybe Supreme Court justices and senators and others who are compromised, because then these security agencies can pretend they're running everything, and they can knock people back into line and knock them out of office or worse when they go astray. That is not what the founders envisaged in our Constitution. That is very far away. When people talk about the Standard Line is worse than Watergate, this is like saying you know, a nuclear Armageddon is worse than a mosquito bite. I mean, this is in a completely different league that we have now. From 1948 on, or from 1945 on, or whatever date you want to pick, the security state has gotten us to a place where they monitor everything we say. They pick winners and losers. When their side gets in trouble, they may eventually express remorse, but they believe they're never going to be punished. And that's a moral hazard situation. You cannot let this continue because it's only going to get worse and worse and worse. So this is a battle that has to be fought, not with violence, but with the power of the populace against these elite crap weasels. People like Clapper, people on their picture there.
These are run-of-the-mill crap weasels. These are the creme de la creme elite crap weasels. But Charles, just on the lines of what you were talking about there, you know, I always come back to this picture of Obama where it says the office of president-elect. And he doesn't yet quite look like a Q-tip because his hair is still black and he's not as, like, you know, washed out as he is these days. But look at Jim Jones back here looking at Hillary like, what the hell are you doing here? And then as far as pictures telling 1,000 words, the framing, I mean, if this was an NYU film class, we'd be talking about how he's in the background. He's being closed out by Hillary.
Yeah. Well, if you put that picture back up, I'd like the viewers to note that I'm blacker than he is.
That's true. Can you dunk, though, Charles?
I could probably play basketball better than he. I certainly skeet shoot as well as he can, and I kick his ass on the tennis court for sure.
Only one photo of the skeet shooting, of course.
Of course, yeah.
But remember, there was this whole story about how Jim Jones was supposed to be the Secretary of State, and then Hillary got in there. You really never hear about Jim Jones anymore. What does he do?
Is he the guy who drank the Kool-Aid down there in Guyana or something?
Well, it's a same name, but in other words, this is a guy who, according to questionable weirdo Patrick Berge, although I believe he was being honest about this, Jim Jones got involved in lots of social engineering campaigns through social media software. He was, I think, a general in Iraq, and this got into how they were using, you know, kind of like Twitter duplicates to control the populace and inject narratives and stuff like that. I think this is where all that was kind of hatched, so to speak.
Right. But going back then to this January 12th revelation, the Horowitz report is kind of interesting on, I forget what it was on exactly, but the lengthy one that we jumped all over and talked about endlessly. It recounts a timeline that I think is false. It's not fleshed out enough. But that timeline begins, I believe, in April or early May 2015. And I think it begins with private people contacting, I think it was Comey or it was somebody in the FBI. First, a private powerful person says,
I think this was about the FISA applications. Wasn't that what the Horowitz report was about?
I think so, yeah. But it talks about the Clinton Foundation.
Crossfire Hurricane?
I forget which one, but this is a timeline relating to the Clinton Foundation. So it says, my piece was out in March of 2015. And I'm sure there are pieces that have gotten more over time, more Facebook shares than mine. But I believe it was at 80,000 Facebook shares. I mean, a lot of people saw that piece in March of 2015. Then private people contacted, I don't know who exactly, and said, you really should investigate it. Then Schweitzer's book, I didn't know Schweitzer had a book in process, but Schweitzer's book comes out, hits the New York Times because he had a deal. Lin Chu, his agent, I think, arranged some kind of a deal to let the New York Times see it before the public saw it. So it ensued all these articles with the New York Times, controversy over whether all of the claims were actually correct. The Clintons claiming now in two separate books that Schweitzer had to correct what he said, and it was, his conspiracy theory and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. But I like Peter Schweitzer's work. But by focusing on pay-to-play corruption, that's a much tougher thing to prove than charity fraud. When you're running the charity, that's easier in comparison. So he went down the pay-to-play, I went down the charity fraud. And by early May 2015, Bill O'Reilly, when he was at the height of his power at Fox, said the FBI, he demanded that the FBI open an investigation into the Clinton Foundation in early May 2015.
Charles, this is important. Let me pause you for a second because it says yes. Because you just said something very important that we need to hang on for a moment. This says yes. Peter Schweizer's publisher, HarperCollins, made corrections to the Kindle version of his book, Clinton Cash, after the initial publication. 7 or 8 factual inaccuracies identified after the first printing. And the reason why I held on this, I know you have a lot to lay out, and we're going to get into it in the First Amendment Forum. But you just said something pretty important. So your article comes out in Breitbart there, and I know, see, this happens all the time where we talk about this since I've known you, but I think it just hit me. You were kind of the first person to get this story to really catch fire in that, you know, it's not so much the number of Facebook shares it has compared to the most monumentally viral story. It's that nobody was really talking about this detail prior to you bringing it up. And so Peter Schweitzer, you didn't know, you weren't working with him. He goes in this other direction with something that's more difficult to prove, puts out a book that initially contains inaccuracies, and then now it's known that the publisher had to correct it. And what they do is they sort of conflate Peter Schweitzer with you in that you're both these sort of conservative, you know, CNN or whoever says, who are these guys? You know, they put you guys in the same basket of deplorables, if you will.
Right.
And then the Clintons say, oh yeah, all that had to be corrected. This is their standard play. I think we're understanding something more about the sequence of events with the Peter Schweitzer book than I did before.
Yeah. Well, just to, I don't know how much time we have before we move on, but just to give our free audience a few kernels here. So by early May, O'Reilly is pounding the table, and then he had a huge megaphone. I don't know what his audience was, but I think it was the top-rated cable show at 8 o'clock. And he's saying he's demanding an FBI investigation. Well, an FBI investigation of the secret server bullshit that starts. The Inspector General of the Intelligence Community recommends that the FBI open an investigation into that strand in July of 2015. Okay? But they wait on the Clinton Foundation until January. And now we learn that Obama's saying by January 12th, Obama's saying that's a stain on my legacy, don't go there. And we are also learning in the Monkey memo, not monkey, we're learning in that memo that Loretta Lynch was in close contact with a Clinton campaign official whose last name is something like Renteria. And you know, Lynch was basically briefing the Clinton campaign about what was going on in the various investigations, Russiagate and now the Clinton Foundation. And we know from other reporting by Cheryl Atkinson that there were 4 field offices, a minimum of 4 field offices were hard at work chasing probably some of the leads that I had laid out there and others. And the Justice Department said, you know, investigate all you want. We're not going to prosecute. I mean, it's that. I'd like to marry that up. I'd like to see, you know, in Obama's case, is he like king of the universe? He can say, no, I don't want you going over there when no one's above the law. Well, you know, I don't want you going over there because that's going to fuck up my grift, man. You know, that is, and we were told, you know, when Trump was president, when Bush was president, you know, when Republicans president, a president cannot weigh in publicly on an open investigation. No,
or
on an
direct
open
them to invest in it or not. Yeah, they say all kinds of restrictions on what these guys can do. Well, Charles, we got a lot to discuss in the First Amendment Forum. People are going to be able to join us there on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. People are still contacting me on Odyssey saying, hey, what's wrong with my subscription? Odyssey recently lost They're credit card processing partners, so they can't accept regular money. People have to use cryptocurrency on Odyssey. And if you have been watching on Odyssey, you've been getting the show for free for several months. So thank you to the people who have made one-time sponsorship payments on paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. If you'd like to rejoin on one of these other platforms that do accept credit cards, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, subscribestar.com, and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And people who are following me on X at JG_CSTT can also get the sponsor exclusive content after it's live. We'll be right back in just about